Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. It is that time of the year again. We are getting into the fall season, which means lovely, atmospheric, cozy reading time. One could argue that the fall season is a reader's favorite season, so we are going to be getting into some fall recs and fall TBR today. I was originally going to make this a complete fall recs video, but then I realized I made a fall recs video last year, and as I was compiling a list of recommendations, I noticed there was a lot of overlap in my list from last year's fall recs to this year's fall recs. So instead of just repeating myself and making everything just very boring and repetitive and making the same video again, we are just going to start off with a few, like a couple fall recs that I read in this past year, and so are just more like additions to that list, and then we are going to get into my personal fall TBR. Let's just get into it. I can't believe we're already in that season, like where we're doing fall reading content. I feel like it's going to be Bookmas in no time at all. But okay, let's not jump ahead of ourselves. We still have a whole season ahead of us before Bookmas starts. I do want to start with 3 fall recs that I read this past year and think would make lovely additions to my fall reading recommendations. The first one I actually have read quite recently, so you may be familiar with this one, but The Wild Huntress by Emily Lloyd Jones. I did read this in like a heat wave this summer, but as I was reading it, I was like, this is the perfect fall read. It's so woodsy. You can like smell that like damp, woody scent, you know, like the smell of earth when you're reading this, and I feel like that just screams fall. This book is so foresty, it is so atmospheric. This is a fantasy standalone, which like yay for fantasy standalones. It's actually a story that is based on Welsh mythology, so we have like a lot of fairy folklore in this book. It's not the type of fae that you see in a romantasy, for example. It's more that mythological being, more like the Emily Wilde style of fae, or like the Cruel Prince even, but I feel like even the Cruel Prince was a bit of a hybrid between that mythological fae and the romantasy fae. This one is definitely straight like mythology. But in this world, every 5 years, there are 2 kingdoms, one mortal and one fairy kingdom, that host and take part in this wild hunt. Whatever the wild hunt is, it is very mysterious because anyone who has entered a previous wild hunt is actually not allowed to talk about it. But what everyone does know is that joining the wild hunt is a big risk. It's very dangerous, it can get very bloody, but the ultimate prize of this wild hunt is actually that you can get any wish granted by the other king. So because of this, we have these hunters from all over who join this wild hunt and just they want to win. We follow 3 POVs. So our first is Bronwyn. She is a huntress. She's been touched by magic at birth, so she has this like magical eye that can see magic around her. And she is also desperate to help cure her mother's sickness. Our second character is Gwydion. He is like he's kind of like a jokester, he's a trickster, but he comes from a noble family. He's always been seen as the underdog in his noble family though, because his family has magic. So he has siblings with like fire power and metal power and all of these like, you know, offensive combat powers, but Gwydion's powers are actually plant powers. So he can manipulate plants like trees and flowers and whatever. So everyone sees him as weak, but his reasoning for joining this hunt is that he wants to just make sure his tyrant brother does not come into power. We then have Parry, our third POV. He is a very interesting one. He was actually born as a prince to the mortal king, but when he was a child, he was taken away and actually raised by monsters. So he's like a monster-raised royal. He's just returned, and he's just trying to find his place now because he's torn between these 2 identities of himself, and he just wants to prove himself. And so he joins in this hunt. And so these 3 characters meet obviously, and the story takes like so many twists and turns. I feel like the progression of this plot was something that I have never read before. It was actually very unpredictable for me in the best way. It wasn't like one of those like, aha, big twist type of books, but it was just a very creative story. And I loved it. It kept me on my toes. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit different, that will not remind you of like every other book you've read, definitely pick this one up. And yeah, it also just has wonderful, wonderful foresty fall vibes. Another book I'd recommend is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. So I actually read this one last year because I was so lucky enough to receive an ARC, but like a vampire story. Like fall is just the best time for that. And I don't know if that's just like the little Twilight teenager fan inside of me coming out, but I'm like, fall vampires. Yep. So this is a sapphic vampire fantasy. We follow 3 vampires as they just like progress through life. This is one of those stories that spans over thousands and thousands of years because we are talking about immortal vampires here. And yeah, we just follow 3 women who are so different. They all have a different purpose in life. They all have very, very different personalities. And V. Schwab has described this story as like just a story about hunger, a story about thirst, seeing how these 3 different female vampires deal with that thirst and see how that thirst and hunger changes them and drives their actions. Such an incredible book, you guys. So good. I love the characters. I love like the vampire lore. I love the storytelling. This book just felt like you were looking deep into V.E. Schwab's soul. It has a similar pace and like storytelling structure to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, but then you get these characters that to me felt more reminiscent of V.E. Schwab's characters in Vicious. Just very morally gray. Like they make very questionable choices, but you can't help but just keep reading. You just can't look away. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this for the fall season. It's so like vampire atmospheric. It's probably a very good October read. Wonderful. So good. And my third recommendation is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. Now, I was so lucky enough to read an arc of this as well in April, and this is my favorite Rebecca Ross to this date by far. Like it was absolutely incredible. It blew me away and it actually surprised me because like I love Rebecca Ross as an author, but this, I don't know, there was something about this book that was just a step above. Wild Reverence is sort of a prequel to the Divine Rivals duology. It is set in the same world, but I would say, because I've gotten this question quite a bit, I would say you can read Wild Reverence if you have not read Divine Rivals yet, because it's not like a direct prequel. It is just a story that is set in the same world. So if you haven't read Divine Rivals, you might miss a couple of Easter eggs and like fun things that Rebecca Ross threw in there, but it's not like you're not gonna understand the story and like you're not gonna miss that much if you haven't read the Divine Rivals duology. I would still recommend reading Divine Rivals as well because I absolutely adore that duology and like, so why not? But yeah, you can read this one without Divine Rivals knowledge. But this one follows Matilda. She is the youngest of the gods and she has been bestowed with this like very underdog power. She is a god of the heralds or like the god of the messengers. So her god duties are just to like go between all the realms and deliver messages to people. Because of this, she obviously encounters like a lot more of a variety of characters than the average god would. So she sees like the upper realm, the mortal realm, the lower realm, and she comes into some, you know, difficulties as she goes through the realms and delivers these messages. There is also an element of like dreams and visions in the story. So this mortal boy named Vincent starts getting dreams of Matilda, and that sort of complicates her life further in many ways. I don't know how much I want to tell you about this story, but it is just a beautiful story filled with mythology, absolutely beautifully written. We do have a little bit of a romance in here. It's one of those stories that feels like it's been blessed by the gods. I mean, we are following gods, but it's just one of those like fate stories. Like everything feels like it just so beautifully falls into place, and I love Wild Reverence. The writing's beautiful. Of course, it's Rebecca Ross. You get her like beautiful poetic writing, and the story, oh, it was just so good. There were some characters in this book that I didn't expect I would love and then ended up really loving them. Like they became some of my favorite characters. But yeah, this book is coming out this month in September. I think it would be a perfect fall read, and so that's Wild Reverence. The whole thing felt like a dream, to be honest, but like in the best way, like a wonderful dream. So those are my little fall recs to add onto my list from last year, but let's now get into my personal fall TBR. This is sort of a mix of like atmospheric standalones. We have some fantasy in there. We have some continuations of series. We have some classics, because when the fall and winter come around, this is the season where I like tend to want to dive more into classics, which is very rare feeling for me. And then there are also some new book releases that are coming out this fall that we're going to talk about. So let's start with some standalones first. This first one is The Scholar and the Last Fairy Door by H.G. Parry. This has actually been sitting on my TBR for quite a while, but we do have an academic setting in here, obviously, which I think is perfect for, you know, fall reads. Like it's kind of like back to school season, even though I'm not going back to school. September for some reason just like will always be ingrained in my mind as like back to school season. But this one is a standalone historical fantasy. We are set in 1920 and we have a magical academy set in England. Our main character is named Clover and she wants to go to this academy to find a magical cure for her brother. But this magical academy is very secretive. It's hard to find, maybe it's hard to get into, but Clover catches the eye of Golden Boy Alden Lennox Fontaine and his friends. So these doors to the academy that were previously closed are now flung wide open for her. But as she gets, into this academy, she starts unfolding all of these deadly secrets. And this just sounds like so much fun. If you guys have been following the podcast and listened to our tropes episode, you will have learned that the the magical school trope is literally my favorite fantasy trope ever. Like, give me a magical academy and I will love it. I mean, 99% of the time I will love it. There was an exception with Zodiac Academy. I don't know what happened there. But usually I will love a magical academy setting. So I absolutely love the sound of this. This also says that this is a mythic tale of secret scholarship, fairy curses, and the deadliest spells of all, the ones that friends cast on each other. And that just sounds so wonderful. So I definitely want to read this. The next fantasy standalone is The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. Maclean. I think this was actually on my fall TBR last year as well. Oops, but I'm determined to read this one this fall because I read the first page in this as a little preview as I was doing my speed dating my TBR experiment, and I absolutely loved the first few sentences of this book. The writing feels so cozy and yes, atmospheric, perfect for fall. But we follow a phoenix keeper at a zoo. So we have a magical zoo setting, which sounds like so much fun, and she just wants to save phoenixes. Like, that is her goal in life. But there is a hotshot griffin keeper who happens to be her arch rival from college. She's an insufferable know-it-all with the face of a goddess who's convinced that Ayla, our main character's beloved phoenix, would be better off as a performer than as a passive conservation exhibit. So we have zoo magical keeper rivals, and this is queer. It is sapphic, I guess. This just sounds amazing. Also, as I'm flipping through the book, the little chapters have literal little phoenix footprints. Can't wait to read this one, and I'm actually gonna get to it this fall. Okay, I've been saving this next book since January because I purchased it in January when it came out, but then I've just been waiting for the fall to read it because it's an Adrienne Young book, and I feel like I just love Adrienne Young books in the fall. She has one of those very, very, very moody writing styles, which I think are perfectly suited for the fall. I guess this probably would have worked in January too, kind of in the middle of winter. She's just a cold month author. But this is A Sea of Unspoken Things. This is one of her magical realism mysteries where our protagonist has a twin who is unfortunately killed in a tragic accident. She goes back to this island to settle things, but as she starts revisiting things and uncovering things that might have happened, there are some mysterious things and unique connections that haven't completely vanished. So the more she kind of immerses herself in this, the more she questions what happened and what really went down. So A Sea of Unspoken Things. This sounds like such a classic Adrienne Young. The premise of it almost sounds exactly like, what was her other book? Oh yeah, Spells for Forgetting. I feel like this premise feels so similar to that one because we had a similar premise of someone coming back to settle affairs of someone who passed away, and then they start uncovering things. So sounds like kind of a similar concept with a few different connections. I also want to read The Wishing Game by Meg Shaffer this fall. I read the first page of this one and it seemed kind of Caraval-esque, very mystical in a way, kind of abstract, sort of like a Caraval or maybe a night circus. So I thought this would be very well suited for the fall as well. But this one I think is set on an island called Clock Island, which already feels so Caraval, with all the clock imagery. I think an author is hosting a contest on this Clock Island, and our main character is one of the few contestants chosen to participate. So she goes to this Clock Island, and yeah, I don't know, it just sounds very Caraval-y. I feel like this is going to be a book for book lovers. There are literally books on the cover. It is a book about a writer, and I just feel like I love these types of books. So yeah, I want to get into this. I've never read a book from Meg Shaffer before, but I've heard wonderful things about this author. I think she also wrote another one that was described as kind of like a fairy tale for adults. I can't remember. Or it was described as Narnia for adults or something. I can't remember. Was it called The Lost Game, The Lost something? Can't remember. But yeah, I want to read this one, and if I love this book, I want to check out her other books as well, because I've heard some very good things. Okay, there are a few classics that I want to get to this fall, or maybe this winter, like sometime in this latter half of the year. The first one is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I can't believe I have not read this book yet. Like, am I even a reader? How have I not read this yet? I obviously really love this story. I have seen multiple film adaptations that tell this tale, so I already love the story. I already love the characters. I feel like I just need to read the source material at this point. I feel like I don't need to explain the premise of this book. I feel like most people know what this is about. It's such like a cozy, heartwarming tale. You know, we follow sisters, and like, who doesn't love sisters? We're gonna get to it this fall or this winter at the very latest. The other classic I want to get to is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Many of you probably already know what this one is about as well, because it's a classic. But we follow a poet who gets an internship, and then she starts struggling with depression. So we follow her as she gets sent to a psychiatrist. She goes on this path to hospitalization. And yeah, so we just follow Esther, our main character, as she goes through all of this. It's described as a coming of age story. I feel like this is a classic I could get along with, hopefully. Okay, this next one is not a classic, but probably should be, probably will be in a while. But I do want to get into some more Fredrik Backman again. This one is Anxious People. You guys know I went on a Fredrik Backman like binge this spring and early summer. I fell in love with his books this year. I think I've read like 5 books from him this year, 6 maybe. Hold on. I read the entire Beartown trilogy, so that's 3. I read My Friends. I read A Man Called Ove. Did I read anything else? Okay, yeah, that's it. So I did read 5 books from him. This will be the 6th book from him this year. So clearly, I love this author. I don't know what this one is about. I think it has something to do with like real estate or something from what I've heard, but I really want to go into this one blind, so I'm not even going to look at the back of the book. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Fredrik Backman is an author who I just want him to tell me the story. I don't want anyone else to tell me what his books are about. I just want it from him. I absolutely adore his writing. He manages to go so deep into all different kinds of humans, and I feel like whenever I read his books, I just learn so much about different perspectives in life. So yeah, I can't wait to read this one. I have also not stepped away from a Fredrik Backman book dry-eyed. So when I'm in the mood for a good cry, I'm gonna jump into this one. All right, and there are some series that I want to prioritize continuing this fall and like maybe finishing this fall. No, I'm not gonna finish all of these this fall, because the first one is Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, aka book 2 of the Stormlight Archive, and I will most definitely not be finishing this entire series this fall because these books are all this thick. This one I think is the longest one. I think this one is 1,310 pages long. So I'm not going to be finishing this series this fall, but I can at least read this one this fall. I'm so excited for this book, you guys. I have been very on the fence with Brandon Sanderson and his writing. I didn't love the Mistborn trilogy. I didn't love Trust of the Emerald Sea, but I loved Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and I did love The Way of Kings. I am going to read Warbreaker this month, and then I'm going to get to this one maybe in October. I am fully locked into the Cosmere at this point. I will slowly make my way through it. This is definitely a series that is high on my radar, and I will need to prioritize reading this one because I feel like if I don't prioritize this one, I will just never get to these books, because who wants to pick up a book that's this thick? Another series I want to continue is The Ember Quartet by Sabaa Tahir. So this is A Torch Against the Night. This is book 2, and I really loved book 1. It's a YA fantasy series, although I will say this reads more upper YA. There are definitely some dark themes that are explored, but we are in a dystopian fantasy setting. We follow 2 character POVs. Leia in the first book has to go undercover as a slave to save her brother, and Elias is the heir to like the ruling but like bad guys faction, and he's training to be in the military, but he does not really want to be there. So those are 2 main characters, and we just follow them. They meet each other, their stories get intertwined, and yeah, there are 4 books in the series, so I definitely want to read on. Okay, and then we have Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, the second book in the Red Rising series. Now, I did not love the first book. You guys know this. A lot of you have let me know that this series is like the ACOTAR progression, where the first book is not the best, but the second book is like on a complete different level. So I'm trusting you guys. I'm gonna prioritize continuing this series this fall, and I hope you guys are right about this, because I do really enjoy Pierce Brown's writing. I think his writing is incredible. The first 100 pages of Red Rising really gripped me, but it was the later half of the book that really lost me. It started feeling very boring, repetitive. If you don't know what Red Rising is about, we follow Darrow, who is a red. He is on the lowest tier faction of society. So we have like a color-coded society. He's a red, golds are on top, and we have a bunch of colors in between, and reds have been sent to Mars to help like prepare the planet for humans to move to, because Earth has become too overpopulated. Certain events happen. Darrow finds himself in a situation where he needs to disguise as a gold to infiltrate this gold academy, and then we go into this like, I don't know, Hunger Games battle. I do think like the setup at the end of the book was leading into something that seemed more interesting. I am excited to move on and read the second book, and I do have high hopes. And then I also have a list of just a few releases coming out this fall that I want to read as well. The first one actually is already out, but It's Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. This one actually came out this summer, but I never acquired it. I never got my hands on it, but I definitely want to get to it maybe in October. This one is Holly Jackson's first adult thriller, so I'm very curious about that, because the thing that's always bugged me about her books is that her character POVs always feel so annoyingly YA for me personally. So I think the fact that this is an adult novel is really making me all kinds of intrigued. But this one follows Jet. I think she like wakes up in the hospital and learns she only has 7 days to live, but she was brutally attacked on Halloween. That's why she's in the hospital. So as a result, she has 10 days to solve her own murder, essentially. And that just sounds so exciting. I feel like that time constraint always adds like a lot of suspense and like, ooh, like it just makes everything feel so much more exciting and claustrophobic, but in a good way. So I can't wait to read this one. I'm also excited for A Theory in Dreaming by Ava Reed. I can't remember when this one releases. I think it's soon, but this is the second book to A Study in Drowning. A Study in Drowning wasn't my favorite book of all time, but I did really love Ava Reed's kind of like moody atmospheric writing. I think she writes perfectly for the fall. She falls into that same category of authors to me, like Adrienne Young, Rebecca Ross, V.E. Schwab, even like those kind of like dark, moody authors that always write dark, moody books. Perfect for the fall. I'm also excited for An Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber that I think by the time this video comes out, that book will have been released, or at least will be released soon. I'm so excited about this one. I love the Caraval trilogy. I love Once Upon a Broken Heart. And again, similar to why I'm excited about the Holly Jackson book, this one is Stephanie Garber's first adult book. So I can't wait. I'm also very interested to see how this one will read, because Stephanie Garber's known for her very like whimsy writing, her whimsical fairy tale worlds, and this one is set in real world. The synopsis says this one is set in LA, so I just can't picture Stephanie Garber writing in a real world setting, but I'm very curious to see how she does with it. This one, I think it's like a fantasy romance. I think there's a romance subplot in there, but we follow our main character is a professor, I believe. There's something about a magical object, and I just want Stephanie Garber to whisk me away with this one. I'm so excited. Last but not least, I absolutely cannot wait for The Strength of the Few by James Islington. This is book 2 to The Will of the Many, and that was like one of my top reads of last year. Such an amazing fantasy, such a cool world. With that cliffhanger we got left on with The Will of the Many too, like I've been waiting to see what happens. I'm also very interested to see like how he tackles, how can I describe this without spoiling everything? How he tackles, I don't want to say anything. No, I'm not going to say anything. But if you've read the book, you probably know what I'm like trying to allude to. But yeah, I loved book 1. The first book follows Vis. He's an orphan as he gets adopted, and then he gets put into this magical academy to spy on certain people. Like his adoptive father just wants him to spy and report back with information. This world feels so like fully fleshed out. There's like a fun MLM magical hierarchy that exists in this world. The politics are very interesting, and yeah, can't wait to get into this one. That being said, I think that's my fall TBR. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know what you need to read this fall. What is on your priority fall TBR list? If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!